So I've been talking about my die cutter, so I thought I'd make a quick little video showing you what exactly it is, how I use it, what goes on, and how much fun I have cutting little pieces of fabric that I can then sew into doll clothes. Which I have fun. I have fun picking out the fabric. I have fun cutting out little pieces with this thing. I have fun sewing little pieces together, and I have fun making the doll clothes. Maybe not your idea of fun, but this is what I'm doing on a Saturday night, so hey, you can come along too. Okay, so here is the fabric I've picked out. I picked this out months ago just for fun, sorting through all my cloth. And I'm setting this aside to use as the bodice and ruffle, so that goes aside. Now this, I need to get 60 squares out of this. I think there's enough at the size of die I'm going to use. I do have more of this, including lots of lint and threads. I do have more of this, so if I need a little bit more, I've got this. If I need a lot more, I'll use some more of this, and then I'll just use plain black pieces to fill it in. But I think this is going to be close enough to getting me 60 that it's not going to be too much of a hassle, but let's go find out. So here it is. It's super cheap. It's competent. It's not the highest quality. I'm not sponsored. I'm not going to mention who makes it because this is like the farthest thing from a sponsored video possible. Anyway, the way it works is you have your dies. This is a 30mm die. I sew the little squares with about a 5mm seam allowance, which means that my finished squares are about 20mm or about 3/4 of an inch. And that's not tiny when you're used to dolls, I promise. Anyway, so you take your die. This has this edge that's shinier. That's the sharp edge. So that goes down. You'll put what you want to cut on this, move it under here, grab the handle, and pull it forward. And you can feel it cutting through everything. And usually it takes a few go-arounds. Like sometimes I will start on one edge and then move it for each edge. Now I can cut several layers at a time. It might not seem fast to people who are used to cutting with a rotary cutter, but I never liked using a rotary cutter. It hurts my wrists. This, especially since I can use it with my left hand, this is great on my wrist, so I'm happy with this. If you like your rotary cutter, good for you. I could never get into rotary cutters. Anyway, so I'm just going to grab a random piece of fabric from my pile. And this one, I think I can fold into thirds. Line my die on that, so it's right in the middle of everything. Alright, slide it in. The fabric is thick enough that it's actually, I need to push down on it a little bit because it is hitting the top of that end. Crunch one, crunch two. I don't have to turn it around. Sometimes you can like use the lever on that and then push it so it's kind of on the back part. But I like to do it all at the front because I can see better. And then we have, should be 6 pieces of fabric because I folded it in half and then folded it in thirds. So I am 1/10 of the way there. Yes, that's my idea of a joke. I'm actually putting too much pressure on it. It shouldn't come up off the back like that and go thump, thump, thump. And I think these are amusing too. So that's 8, and now I'm not going to keep track of everything I do like this. Here's another narrow piece. I don't know if I can do this one in thirds. Looks like it. Maybe. You do need to be careful because this edge is sharp, so you don't want to put that down right on your finger. Let's see. This has been stitched before, so there's thread in it. All of this fabric did come from my scrap bins. And my scrap bins have been accumulating fabric for a long, long time. So yeah, I'm just going to do this many times. These are cheap dyes. They have a seam in one side, and there's a slight gap at the bottom that sometimes hits the thread just right and it won't cut through it. And so I keep scissors here to snip through that one thread and it'll go through. Alright, so I'm just going to do this many times. And if I'm going to cut everything, if I end up with more than 60, that's fine because I will be doing a lot of patchwork projects over time. I've always loved sewing patchwork together like this, but intensely disliked cutting them out. So that's why I splurged. Like I said, it's a little tall within the fabric place. That's why I splurged and got the die cutter. I mean, that's might be enough, I can tell. Not quite all the way through in the bottom. Anyway, yeah. So I'm going to do this until I've gone through all of my pieces. And then see if that's 60. And if it's not, we'll have to scrounge some more fabric. But it should be. And I want to hold on to the things that are this size, but it's not big enough even for the 30mm die. And I have smaller dies, but I don't really want to sew together smaller squares. So 30mm is about as small as I will go for my projects. So I can convince myself that maybe I can let this go. Or maybe what I'll do is just trim off these pieces and still put this back into my stash to decide about sometime in the future. So yeah, I got a decent amount of fabric to cut, so I will do that off camera, just so this video doesn't get to be ridiculously long. Really, I will. I just, like I said, I have so much fun getting the cloth folded and prepped for this stuff. But now I'm going to turn the camera off and come back when all my pieces are cut. So this is where I ended up. There are 65 pieces in here. I went ahead and cut some more of this since there was only going to be one of them with what I had, and I wanted there to be more. I didn't cut all of this possible into little squares because I discovered some of the pieces were big enough to cut bodice pieces from. Also, I really like the color combination, so that has been put with another bag of fabric that will end up as patchwork eventually. This, I probably won't use these because they are just black and red and not the rainbow color of everything else. But I do have another bag of fabric pieces that are black and red based, so these probably will go into there and get used eventually. So that gives me just over 60 to work with. If I do need more for variety, I can go cut more of these, or like I said before, I can cut just plain black pieces. So the next thing to do is just start laying them out. I need 4 rows of 15. And literally I just put one down and start putting another one. My main goal is to make sure that the prints don't end up too close to themselves, but sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes I pay attention to grain, sometimes not, because this is not really going to be a soft and flexible item when it's done anyway. There's some thread. Oh. So yeah, I just do this until I have 15 wide and 4 deep. And these two aren't technically the same. Oh wow, I didn't realize how far to the side that was. These aren't technically the same, but they really look like it. But I might put them next to each other to make a point. So I have the most of this one, so I have to try to remember to use this one the most. And like I said, I just keep laying stuff out till I've got 15. So I want this to be somewhere around the middle. I haven't put down any of the classes yet. Okay, so now to deal with this. So there are 4 rows of 15. So what I do is I move the whole ironing board over so it's right behind my chair at the sewing machine. And then I take the first 2, sew them together with a really, really, really short stitch, just so I don't have to back tack at the end. And then as soon as those 2 are sewn together, I take the 2 from the next row and sew those together, and then these come out of the machine, and then I add this one, and then those come out of the machine, and I add that one, and then that comes out of the machine, I add that one. So it's just sewing, 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 alternating rows, so I never have to cut the thread between them, so I don't use a lot of thread tails and waste a lot of thread that way. That's really common for patchwork. It's called chain stitching and chaining, and it saves so much thread. I also have a really lightweight thread that I bought specifically for doing patchwork piecing. I can get a lot of it on the bobbin, so I don't have to change the bobbin as often. It is white, which is not optimum for a color assortment like this, but it's fine. This is doll clothes. It's not haute couture. I'm not trying to make a masterpiece here. I'm just making a doll skirt. So I'm going to move everything over to the sewing machine and start stitching. Okay, that is both of the first two rows. That took 6 minutes. So I'm going to turn the camera off and sew the other two rows. And then I gotta move the ironing board back over, and then I have to press everything. Okay, and now I need to press them so the seam allowances are going in opposite directions. And I do want to acknowledge my ironing board is horrible. It's very, very stained, but that's because I use it. Alright, so to do them in opposite directions. Alright, now back to the sewing machine. So, the reason you iron the seam allowances in opposite directions, and this is something that's very commonly done in patchwork, quilting. Gotta be pedantic. Quilting is when you're sewing through multiple layers, patchwork is when you're sewing little pieces together, but most people assume they're the same thing, so anyway, the reason you iron the seam allowances in opposite directions is when you lay them over each other, they kind of interlock, so that you get slightly more accurate without having to pin everything together to get things aligned, and it's lazier. It's lazier than pinning things. So. Back to the ironing board. Okay, I like to press the seam allowances up, but you can press them open, you can press them down, it's entirely up to you. Alright, so from the first stitch to now, including getting the video stuff set up between shots and moving things around and including mistakes that you didn't see me make, but I did, that took half an hour. So, like I said, I like doing this stuff. I can do it pretty quickly. I really should get a press board to put on this to help it lay flat. But anyway, yeah. So the next step would be to cut out the bodice and the ruffle and just assemble the dress, which I'm not going to do right now because I am in a cut out little squares and sew little squares together mood, but I am going to do it, and that'll be after the next edit. Or rather, I will show you the finished dress after the next edit, because this video is not about making the dress, this video is about the patchwork and the die cutter. And anyway, okay, here is the finished dress. Get her arms out of the way. There's actually, since these fabrics coordinated so well on their own, it's not really an order out of chaos kind of thing. It's just, it doesn't really read as chaotic. It's just black and rainbow. So I did make other dresses with the same size die for the squares at the same time. So you see it's a little more the chaos into order of patchwork kind of look. When the fabrics aren't so extremely coordinated as they are with the black background and the bright prints like the other one. yeah, I've been busy. I do have a lot of fun making these patchwork things, so I kind of get to a point where I have to stop myself. I have to say, like, look, I have 7 dresses cut out and ready to go. I need to sew them. But there's always so many more little pieces of fabric that you can coordinate, and that's where I have fun. Well, I have fun sewing. I have fun with the whole process. That's why I do it so much. But anyway, yeah. So, if you were curious about the die cutter and the dressmaking, well, this has been a video about it. Thanks for watching.